So welcome to Midweek Experiments in Faithfulness. My name is Jen Higgins-Newman, and I'm the program manager at Beacon Hill Friends House. The Friends House is a Quaker center for learning and action and a residential community of about 20 people who live according to Quaker values. In the Quaker tradition of midweek worship, we at the Friends House are excited to have you at our very first Midweek Experiments in Faithfulness event. So this is a weekly 1-hour facilitated practice with a Quaker flavor and an experimental ethos. Each week, a guest facilitator will engage us in a unique spiritual practice. Tonight, we're asking the questions together: how do we find truth in our bodies? How do we find light? How can all of our holding in the light flow from that seeking and that finding? Evan McManamy is our facilitator tonight, and Evan will share a practice from his experience in trauma therapy bodywork. We encourage you to find a comfortable place to be present with us this evening. Take the time that you need to settle in for this practice. Now, I'm excited to introduce you to Evan McManamy. Evan is a licensed massage therapist and a trauma therapy bodywork practice based out of Rhode Island. One foundation of Evan's work is a mindfulness-based approach to embodied trauma therapy that is currently being studied by the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health at the National Institute of Health. Evan works in concert with other healthcare providers in Rhode Island. His work forms part of a multidimensional approach in addressing the psychological and embodied effects of trauma and chronic pain. One of Evan's current projects together with his cooperative community is Cartwheel RI, a donation-based grocery delivery nonprofit. And Evan, now to you.
So, as Jen said, I'm a licensed massage therapist. I run a trauma therapy bodywork practice in this very room. I like to start off when I present about the work I do by acknowledging some of my teachers in doing this. So the three teachers I like to acknowledge, first one is Sweetwater Nanak, and she's a Tlingit traditional healer. She lives out in Seattle, Washington, and when I was living out there, we did a lot of work together around kind of bigger picture decolonization and what healing looks like at a more individual level. I also like to acknowledge John Calvi. He was one of the people that taught me a lot of kind of meditation work when I was in middle school and from that point on, and he's been a mentor to me in doing this work that I do. And then the third person, there's a woman named Cynthia Price out. She's a researcher at the University of Washington, and she's done some of the research that supports the kind of interventions that I offer folks. So a lot of mindfulness-based stuff, specifically around trauma. It's exciting for me to offer this kind of work in this Quaker space because I feel like so much of what I'm doing with my clients is using Quaker practice, is using things that we've learned together in a one-on-one basis. So to be able to bring it back and out of this community is fascinating. Right. So getting started. Finding a way to sit that we can be here for what's going to be about 15 minutes. Finding a way to be comfortable sitting here. And I'd like to start this centering practice. And again, I know everybody's got their own centering, their own ways of doing it. So I'm grateful for you grateful to you for following me on this. But yeah, so just getting started with this one, we're going to find what is some kind of rhythm? What is some kind of rhythm that we feel right now? This might be a rhythm we feel, it might be our breath. Sometimes you can feel the heartbeat. Sometimes, for me, if I get really still, sometimes I feel the heartbeat here in my temples. So we're saying, what is some rhythm that's going on right now? It might be a rhythm coming in from outside of our bodies too. It might be the tick of a clock. Might be the traffic outside. I don't know if other people can hear that. But we're finding something in particular that, for me, I'm going to be using the breath. I'm going to be saying, okay, how do I feel? The inhale as it comes in, the exhale as it goes out. And then the question becomes, how can I really be in the groove of that rhythm? How can I feel like I'm really almost dancing with it? How can I feel like I'm joining with that rhythm? One metaphor I like to use when I think about this is to say, when we're listening to music, we can feel these almost two different ways of doing it. To say, okay, I hear music and it's happening in the room, but I'm not really dancing with it maybe. And then there's this other way to say, I can feel it. I'm moving it. I feel it in my body. It's almost like I'm in tune with it, in the groove of it. So that's what we're looking for. That's what we're inviting in here. We're saying, how can we be in the groove of whatever rhythm we've picked? And if we haven't picked, just finding one, just go ahead and pick one, whether it's the breath, the heartbeat, something else. We're saying, all right, how can we be in the groove with that? Great. As we continue to feel that rhythm, we're going to say, okay, how does it grow? Do I notice any places in my body that feel like they're not part of that so much? If it's the breath, if that's the rhythm I'm working with, I might say, okay, as I go down with that exhale, do I feel any places that feel like they're not part of that breathing? And how can I invite whatever rhythm it is that I'm working with? How can I invite that to be the wave coming up the beach that pushes and pulls and encourages these places to be part of this whole body movement? Sort of saying, how can that rhythm grow? How can we be more and more in the groove of that rhythm? So leave a little bit of silence. And that's the question. That's the query we're working with. How can we invite this rhythm to come more and more fully? To more and more fully be who we are. That's awesome. So as we continue to center, I want us to start to move into this listening work. And the listening work here is around how do we tune into whatever our experience of that of God in our bodies is, that of spirit, that of divine, however we find that. We're saying, what does that feel like? One way into that I sometimes use in different language with some of my clients is around what feels like warmth. And then maybe as we get deeper in the practice, we go, what feels like love? And sometimes imagery is helpful here. Sometimes people call to mind a particular pet or a particular loved one, and they say, okay, what does it feel like to really hold that person? Really hold that pet? Or to really be in this environment, this place that's meaningful to me? As we get deeper into this listening work, I really want to invite us to find a way to have this be a tuning in, to have it be almost like we have that old-fashioned radio dial and we're saying, okay, how do we sink in? How do we tune into this sense of love or spirit or God? We're saying at root, maybe we're saying what feels like connection. Another way of entering in that some of my clients and I work with is to say, how do I feel the earth below me? How do I feel the gravitational pull? How do I feel my feet on the floor, my hands on my thighs? How do I feel the weight of that? In this way that tells me that weight is connection, that weight, that gravity, that's the gravitational pull between the earth and my body. And if we can tune into that, that's the work. That's it. That's what we're doing. I want to bring back that sense of rhythm too, so that stays with us as we continue in this listening work. And for me, what's coming up is around the breath right now. And it's around the way that the breath can remind us that all this work that we're doing, this is about gradual change. This is about gradual opening. This is about settling in. And the breath can remind us that if anything that comes up feels like it's too much, feels like it's a lot, feels like it's overwhelming, we know that we can open our eyes, we can look around the room, we can count how many windows, how many light bulbs. And we can always just go back to that sense of I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. I don't need to do anything else right now. That's enough. Such that we're always approaching this from a place of ease, a place of comfort, a place of connectedness. Wonderful. And as we continue to sink into that listening work, I want to continue to ask, what is it that we're feeling in our bodies? So for instance, for me, if I'm using some imagery, and if the imagery that's coming up for me right now, it is. The imagery that's coming up for me right now is about our puppy, Luca, and holding him, snuggling with him on the floor. I'm asking, what does that feel like in my body? Do I feel warmth? Do I feel warmth anywhere? Do I feel tingling anywhere? It's like, what are these somatic things, these embodied things that I'm noticing, these embodied sensations? And how do I feel that? For me right now, I'm feeling a little bit of a tingling in my face. I'm feeling a tingling in my fingertips. Kind of a warmth in other places. That's really what I want to encourage us to look for, to listen for, is to say, okay, as I'm really here, as I'm really feeling that connection, as I'm really finding this way to sink in, what do I notice in my body? What sensations come up? What do I feel? And the little introduction that I wrote kind of as an explanation of what we'll be doing tonight, I said something like, we're finding that connection in our bodies, and we're saying, we're asking, how can all the holding in the light, all the work that we do in the world, and all the various ways that we do that work, and all these ways that we're called in these present moments, we're saying, how can all of that work, all of that holding, all of that listening, how can that come out of this seeking and this finding? One query might be, what is it that we find in our bodies as we do this kind of work? And how does that help us in the broader work that we do?